are the director of Normal Isn't Real. What inspired you to make that film?
Speaking of families, so my son was identified with learning and attention issues when he was in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
And I think, like so many parents I've talked to, I was really surprised. He was such a bright and curious little boy, and but he was clearly having trouble in reading, and we just couldn't understand why. So once we kind of got a handle on some of his immediate challenges and needs, I just became really interested in what his journey to adulthood might look like and how I could support that. And so I started looking around for other adults with similar issues and how they managed. And I was finding very famous people, which I think is great and very inspiring. I mean, we all need those kind of inspiring, super successful role models. But I was looking for people who were a little more relatable at that point. And I also really wanted to see what their day-to-day lives were like, you know, and so and how they managed to work around their challenges and play to their strengths. So that's sort of like the early seeds for my for this film idea, and a long time ago.
Well, I was going to ask you, how did you approach your film, but I guess you just kind of answered that question for me.
Well, yes, except I will tell you one thing that I did decide to do along the way, and I know you're a filmmaker, so you can sort of understand this. As I got into it more, my ideas of how to really do it evolved. And I originally started out with the idea of doing a more traditional approach of bringing in outside experts.
Yeah.
But what I discovered as the more people I talked to is that the real experts in the film were the subjects themselves. They had become successful because they'd figured out what they needed to be successful and how to ask for that. So even though I consulted a lot of experts along the way, there are no outside experts in the film. The experts are really the subjects themselves. So that approach evolved as I got more into filming and listening and realizing, wow, this is powerful stuff. These people are their own experts.
How did you get them to talk about their dyslexia? Did they have problems doing that?
Well, you know, I think the most important and sometimes the most challenging part of making a film is finding the right subjects.
Yeah.
And this was no exception. And particularly when these are not actors, you know, these are real people who are not trained to talk on camera and have a camera in their faces. So there was that, but I was also very clear from the beginning that if I wanted to tell their stories, but I wanted to be able to not only show the things they were really good at, but the things that were hard for them and how they dealt with those things, some of their strategies, some of their daily life strategies. So I was completely transparent from the beginning. And I have been a television and freelance producer and director for my whole career. So I have a lot of experience with sort of understanding how hard it is to tell your story, but also identifying people who do it well. But I have huge respect and admiration for anybody willing to go on camera and be this honest. And honestly, the 4 people I wound up with, I think, are amazing. And, you know, they all did it for one reason. They didn't get paid, but what they wanted to do was help other people with similar challenges. So.
And how did you get involved in film? How did that, I guess, path that you took led to, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how did you get involved in film?
Well, it was a very long time ago. I'm not even going to tell you how many years ago it was, but you know, I had always had these 2 big interests. One was documenting things. I got my first camera when I was 12, and I really wanted one, and nobody in my family was into it, but that was what I wanted. for Christmas. And I also always, I had a piece of me that always wanted to make some kind of contribution to the world, you know, without getting too cliched here. But I wanted to do work that made some kind of difference. And so finding a way to meld those two passions of mine took some doing. But documentary films suddenly seemed to, you know, it was the answer. Took a long time to get into it. I actually started off answering phones at National Geographic back in the days when it was in Los Angeles. But I don't think there's a straight path for anybody, not in those days and not in this day. But it's very difficult. It's very rewarding work.
What advice would you give to anybody who is a filmmaker, inspiring filmmaker, just starting out in their career with dyslexia?
Oh, well, with dyslexia, I think I would give them the same advice I would give to anybody in getting into this business. I think I have encountered, I will tell you, lots of people in this business that have some kind of learning difference. And I'm sure there are a lot of reasons for that. In part, I think because they are particularly creative. And I am not an expert, or I'm not putting out the latest and greatest research, but I do understand that there is oftentimes dyslexia has some really accompanying gifts that are actually lend themselves to filmmaking. So I think I would say what I've said to everybody: there's no straight path. Learn your craft. Learn what makes a good story. You know, an awesome drone shot, as much as I love those, does not make a story. So learn how to tell a story. And then I would also suggest, and I think most people now, because of the accessibility of technology, are doing this, but learn a technical skill as well, whether it's editing or cinematography or sound recording or writing or graphics, you know, so that you have this another tool in your toolbox that makes you less dependent on other people, and also makes you more desirable. And finally, I would just say, look for people who are doing the kind of work that you want to do. Try to get your foot in their door in any way you can, and then work like crazy to make yourself indispensable. You know, anticipate and I don't care if you're the intern or the PA or what you are. You look around, you pay attention to what needs to be done, and you try to anticipate needs. And so, and finally, I just always say, you know what? Be kind, be nice to everybody all the time. I think that's so important.
You're starting to sound like my parents.
Sorry, I don't want to sound too much. Well, you know, I am a parent.
You are a parent, yeah.
It's true. You know, yeah. I have been in this business for so long, and it's hard in a lot of ways. It's very hard, but it's also very rewarding. And it not only is it just career-wise good, you don't burn your bridges, because you never know who that next person is who might be giving you your job, but it's a collaborative business. It's exciting and it's fun. And what's the point, you know, of not treating people with respect and with kindness? And I just feel that it's never done anything but served me well.
What's next for you in film?
Well, I am because I'm self-distributing this film, and it's a real joy to be able to do that. That's a lot of work, but it's something I can do at this point in my career. And so I'm able to go out and travel with it. Oftentimes we are having screenings all over the country and getting great response to it, which is very gratifying to me. So I want to keep doing that. We're finding out more and more uses for the film. We're getting requests from schools and organizations, transition experts, education professors, high schools, And we are now working with Landmark College to develop some mini curricula around this film, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. So there's a lot to do and a lot more life in this film. I also have I have an idea for the next chapter of Normal Isn't Real, but that's kind of still under wraps now, but it's in the back of my mind for sure. What do I hope most for people with LD? And I think the single thing I hope most for is that this stigma will just be erased. And it just seems, I've talked to so many people, I mean, literally hundreds of people with these issues, and they are pervasive. We hear that statistic, 1 in 5, but I can tell you with all the folks I have talked to over the years, and I mean in grocery store lines, on planes, anywhere, I could count on one hand the people who don't say to me, "Oh, my son, me, I have that, or I deal with that." It is so pervasive, and there are so many talents and strengths and so many successful people. I just think it's nuts that there's this stigma around it. And so I think it's so important to do the work that you're doing and getting people to tell their stories, because the more we talk about it, get rid of the shame, we can really embrace the talents. And that's really my biggest hope.
Well, Krys, thank you so much for your time again. Appreciate it. And you can find more about Krys on normalisn'treal.com and at friendsofquinn.com. So again, Krys, I really thank you for this interview and your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Quinn. I really appreciate what you do. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
You too.